Good
Let
evening.
everyone get in here. Wait just a couple more minutes and then we will get started. All right, well, let's get started here. Thank you everyone for coming out to public meeting number 2 of the McHenry County Connection, our countywide bike plan. My name is Emily Dauscher, and I am the planning liaison for the McHenry County Council of Mayors. And with me tonight from McHenry County is Scott Hennings, Assistant Director of Transportation, and John Paul Diepla, our planning manager. And I am going to now turn it over to Jennifer Pangborn, who is from WSP, who is our consultant, and she is going to get us going this evening. Thank you again for coming out.
Thank you, Emily. And we are excited to be here tonight to share more of how this project has moved forward and how we've incorporated everything that we heard during the first public meeting. So like Emily said, my name is Jennifer Pangborn. I am with WSP. I am the project manager for our team. Also with me tonight is Brian and Charlie, who are here to help answer questions and go through the presentation and ask for input from everybody who is on the presentation and meeting tonight. So again, thank you for your time. We're really excited to be here. Here is the agenda that we're going to go through today. We want to recap some of the input that you gave us in the first public meeting, on the first public survey that was out in January and February. We're going to go through some of the goals and some of the analysis that we've done to date, thinking through those goals and how we look at them and incorporate them into the plan. We're then going to walk through the vision that we've started to lay out for the county. We're going to ask for some input on facility preferences. What types of trails and sidewalks do you want to see in McHenry? And then we're going to go through a really fun priority exercise where you're going to get to give us input on if you were in a certain place in the county, where would you like to go? And then we'll wrap it up with just sharing a little bit more about the ideas that we've drafted to date and open it up for discussion. Our goal is to be talking and going through some of the questions on the online survey for about 60 minutes, just to give everybody an idea of how long we are identifying the meeting to go, and that we will be recording this meeting and it will be up on the county website in the next couple of days. And just for anybody who hasn't seen it, the project website is McHenryCountyConnection.com. So just a quick recap on our last public meeting. I hope some of you got to participate in that meeting. We had about 95 different people participate throughout the meeting that we had last. we got some really good feedback, and I wanted to share. Last time we asked people how they heard about the meeting, trying to understand where we should be asking or sharing more about this meeting or future information. We also had lots of diversity in where people were joining us from that meeting around the county. So really starting to highlight, who was there and how we can best communicate with everyone. We asked for input on the project goals on a scale of 1 to 5. How do these goals align with what you think walking and biking should be in McHenry County? We got some really great feedback, as you can see here, and the priority really being focusing on connectivity and safety. Where are the future routes going to be in the county? We also did a really fun exercise for anybody that remembers. We're asking you to put some dots on one or some of the areas that you saw as existing barriers to walking and biking. And you can see in these really fun clusters, if you remember the dots were bouncing all over the screen, there's a lot of input that there were missing gaps in the system, or that trails and sidewalks didn't take people where they needed to go, and that lacking connections to major recreational trails were where people really felt those barriers were. We also asked people, where were some of the destinations and places that you'd like to walk and bike in McHenry County? And as you can see again with these fun clusters, it was the recreational trails, the green spaces, parks, in my community, just being able to move around the place that I live. And then those downtown centers, those business areas, shopping, dining, lots of feedback towards those locations. And we also asked, what type of bike facility would you feel safest using? And we got, some really good feedback here showing that people wanted a separated facility, something more like a trail, really focusing on that safety piece that also aligned with the input that we got on the project goals. And we also asked, what would be some locations that you would like to see walking and biking facilities, whether it's sidewalks or even an on-street bike lane or a trail, or where is that missing connection in the county currently? And we got a lot of input. I tried to summarize some of the feedback that we got on this slide, so I don't mean for everybody to read it all, but we did want to share back with you that we read through each and every comment that we received to try to hit on those points for moving forward with this plan. We heard a lot of the same comments as well, some of the connections between communities or connections to the trails. So we tried to incorporate that into what we're going to share with you tonight. And after the public meeting that we had, we also put out a public survey. And this was done through a link on our website, as well as it was emailed out to some of the cities. And people participated in it. We had some really good participation. 290 people completed the survey. And we asked a lot of different questions for anybody that had the opportunity to take it. We asked, where are people currently walking and biking, trying to really understand, as shown here, what type of trips are currently being taken in the county. So as you can see, 45% of people are walking and biking to dining and recreation, and then 17% to home and work or shopping and errands, and then down. We also asked people, where do you usually or how do you usually travel in the county? And 241 people said they drive, 121 people said they bike, and 103 people said that they walk. But we also asked people, what would be your preferred mode of choice in McHenry County? So not saying how you do it now, but how would you like to do it? And you can see how some of these numbers flipped. That 91 people said that they would like to drive, 174, an increase, said that they would like to bike, and 116 said they'd like to walk. Again, looking at that increase. So definitely some interest in this conversation about walking and biking. We also asked the same question that we asked in the public meeting. What were some of the top barriers to walking and biking currently in the county? And you can see here how people rated these by percentages, just how many people clicked on that, not the total percentage, but a lot of focus on the separated and types of facilities and where they, what is the safety of these facilities as it relates to, connections with cars or being in the right places, or, just connecting all of the different places in the county. We also asked, what's your current walking style? So we got a lot of really good feedback here that people want to walk as a family or for recreation and exercise, but there are people that would like to be walking more for work, school, and errands. And lastly, we asked, what, again, the same type of question that we asked during the public meeting. What is your preferred trail type? So if you're going to be out biking, what type of facility would you like to be on? And as you can see in these very small, my apologies, drawings here, people wanted 154 people preferred a separated trail with some type of landscape buffer or space between the traveling cars. And again, looking at the type of users, it also aligns with these facility types. That 33% are saying they're that recreational trail cyclist or that casual cyclist that we are seeing with the types of preferred facilities. And lastly, we had a map on the public survey asking for people to put locations throughout the county or even outside of the county where you would like to walk or bike. Where are some of the destinations that you currently go? Where are some of the destinations you'd like to go? And we took all of that information that was put into the map and we put it into a Google map, so Google Earth type file, so that we could zoom in and out and start looking at all of the places around the county. And we got hundreds of points, as you can see in this map, showing us where people would like to eat, where they'd like to walk to a restaurant, where are some of the schools, where are some of the healthcare facilities, where are some of the EMS services or other areas that people would like to be able to access. That's all shown here on this map. And then to just summarize again, all of the input that we received from the public meeting, from the survey, and from other conversations that we had, it was really about prioritizing the projects and policies. It's completing those missing gaps. It's about prioritizing the issues, the barriers, the constraints, coordination across different cities, from a city to a county to a state route. It's looking at those funding and financing challenges. It's prioritizing the types of user, really focusing on identifying facilities that all families and casual riders would feel safe on. It's looking at connections to metro stations and other transit facilities, the downtown business areas, and the connections to the regional recreational trails. And really prioritizing the gaps is where we were told to really be looking at. So now that I spoke for a good 15 minutes, we wanted to open it up and start an online survey. So for anybody who joined us last time, we wanted to ask your input again tonight on Menti, which is just an online polling tool that we'd like to use. So if you can use your phones or an iPad or a computer and go to menti.com and put in the code 3702329. We're going to ask you a couple questions here to really understand how you heard about the meeting today and get a couple of ideas of where people are calling in from. And I will share that here. So it looks like some participants did attend the previous meeting, so welcome back. Welcome to some participants who this is your first meeting. We have a lot of great information to share with everybody tonight. I'll wait a couple more minutes and make sure that we get some more participants on here and make sure we're getting input from everybody. Good, we're getting some more here, 24, 25 people. Looks pretty evenly split on people that were able to join us last time or that are new this time. So again, very exciting. And I believe you should be able to answer this question even after we move to the next one. So if anybody's still logging in, the code should be shown up here on the top of the screen.
It's in the chat. It's in the chat as well.
Oh, thank you, Brian. Thanks. All right, our next question is, and we also wanted to know, did you give input on the previous survey? So again, just like the previous public meeting, just trying to understand if people had the opportunity to take the survey. We will be having another public survey and where we'll have more for you to be reacting to based on what we show later. Okay, pretty evenly split again. Great, thank you. All right, and we did want to ask again, how did you hear about this public meeting? Trying to make sure that we are getting the information out in the best way possible and reaching people around the county. Those city newsletters are really successful in getting information out. All right, thank you. And our last intro question here is, just like last time, again, we'd love for you to put a pin in McHenry County on where you live so that we can start to see what cities are being represented tonight. It's fun to see all the dots come in on the map and see where we're getting some input from.
Great. It's also worth noting, Jennifer, that just go ahead and leave Menti open because we're going to use it a lot later on.
Good point. Yep.
In this meeting. So.
This is great. And again, I will leave it open here.
Just kind of recapping, Jennifer, it's almost about 50% of people are new tonight to the meeting, which is great.
Well, and as people are still, filling that out again, really appreciate some of that so we know who is here tonight. Love to open it up, Emily, if there are any questions that you received just on some of the feedback that we've heard to date.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, please put them in the question and answer box. It should be at the bottom of your screen. We don't have anything right now, but you can also ask questions throughout the entire presentation, and then we'll answer them at these breaks in between the parts of the presentation. So.
All right, well then we'll move forward. We can always come back. So, all right, we're going to go into and share now a little bit about how we looked at the project goals. So last time, from the public survey and the public meeting, we asked you about all of these project goals, these 6 that we had put together for this plan, which we're looking at increasing connectivity and safety, building the community and equity, promoting the economy and tourism, improving health and education, embracing sustainability and design, and simplifying management and maintenance. And we asked you to rate those or rank them from most important, your preferred goal, what you want to see with this plan, to not as important to me. And this is the order here on the left that we got the feedback from. And it was a resounding, people really want to focus on the connectivity and safety in those routes that we're looking at. And then the people, the community and equity, and building out the system to impact people. And then facilities, operations, programming, and wayfinding. So really hoping that we can walk through how we're going to be analyzing these and how we're starting to look at these goals. And I'm going to go through them in the order of the importance that you gave us feedback on. So when we're talking about the connectivity and safety goal, really looking at, the places that we're connecting through communities and neighborhoods. There's a lot of data on this screen, but what I wanted to do is go through and show you that we've pulled a lot of information, a lot of analysis to date, looking at all of this different information to really focus in on the recommendations. So we're looking at where are the traffic volumes, where are the heaviest volume roads, making sure that if we're going to make recommendations for routes on those areas or on those roads, that we're thinking of safety. Where are there existing bicycle facilities, and making sure that we're looking at how they're operating and being used now. Where are we missing connections between key community downtowns or community centers? We're looking at where are sidewalks and where are there gaps. We're looking at where are crashes, and really focusing in on those bicycle and pedestrian crashes to understand, about safety and try to make recommendations. And ultimately, we're looking at that connectivity. Where do people want to go? And focusing on those downtown nodes, activity centers, transit, jobs, etc. And so as we layer all of this information together, we created these analysis maps. And this doesn't mean that we're not looking at all the areas, but all of this data that we're looking at really starts to come together so that we can focus in on some areas and say, when we're talking about impacting and increasing connectivity and safety, what facilities or where are we really focusing on? And you can see some of these areas that are jumping to the surface for this goal. So similarly with people, when we're talking about building the community and equity around the multimodal transportation system, we're looking at where are people living? Where do we have a lot of population density, lots of housing, lots of people interested in facilities? Where are some of the elderly population? Where are areas that we want to make sure that we're connecting and providing facilities for all ages? Where do we have limited English as a native language areas in the county? Where are there populations that are below the poverty level or that may not have vehicles in the household? So we can be looking at providing facilities and connections for those communities. And where do we have populations under 5 years old? Again, looking at that all ages and abilities. And also, where do we have some racial minorities in the county, and making sure that we're connecting and providing facilities for all the populations. So again, similarly, we created an analysis map, and these are the areas that, all layering all of this data together started to really rise to the surface and making sure that we are focusing on connecting some of these places that are shown. And again, similarly to my last comment, that doesn't mean that we won't be connecting other places in the county, but this is just what some of that data was showing us. So when we're looking at facilities and embracing sustainability and design and future projects, we're looking at where are some of the existing parks? Where are those natural resources that people want to connect to? And making sure that we're thinking of those. And we heard a lot of input from you all in the previous meeting. We're also looking at the facility design. How and where can we put or recommend facilities so that we can get separation for safety? So that we could look at facilities maybe on both sides of both sides of the road on major routes to again focus on safety. And where can we potentially incorporate landscaping or some type of buffer for bike lanes based on some of the input that we received? Next is the operations. This is simplifying management and maintenance of system assets. This is really just focusing mostly on, we have different jurisdictions in the county. So we have the cities, we have state routes, we have county routes, and making sure that as we're thinking about a recommendation, that we're thinking about how and where those facilities are so that you as a user won't be impacted as you would move across some of those boundaries. So we know that we have to focus on some wider shoulders, maybe in some more rural areas or areas that, we can't fit a facility otherwise. Or how can we utilize more county routes if some of the state routes don't have right of way? Or how do we improve some of those transitions? But really trying to think through, how is this facility going to operate once it is built? We're also, again, looking at some of the local jurisdictions and the cities, focusing on some of the areas that don't have as many bicycle and walking facilities, and trying to connect some of the downtowns throughout the county. We've heard a lot of focus about that, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. And the last two goals, programming. This is improving health and education of users and groups of all ages and abilities. We're looking at some of the disabled populations and some of those pockets and looking at how we can provide facilities for those users. We're looking at some of the populations that may lack healthcare. Again, maybe we're looking at those connections to healthcare facilities. And then populations without a high school diploma, and really looking at connecting some of those areas. And as you can see in this map, we have multiple smaller pockets, trying to make sure that we're focusing in on some of those areas for connections. And lastly, place, which is promoting connectivity and safety, or yes, connectivity and safety. We're focusing in on those parks and recreation areas, the downtown nodes, and making sure we're looking for ways to highlight the bicycle network to build tourism. This should have been our tourism and economy goal, so I said that wrong. We're really trying to focus on connecting some of the different destinations in the county, the downtown nodes, and building up the tourism options in McHenry. And so this is a layer of some of those different pockets of information. Some of it's parks, some of it is the downtowns, and some of the input that we've received from you all. So we went through those goals pretty fast. And like I said, we're using it again as just a rough estimate to be looking at recommendations, but really trying to, again, how are we bringing our recommendations back to the project goals? So I'd love to see if there's any questions before we move into another exercise and asking some more input from you all on Menti.
Yeah, so we do have a couple of questions. The first one is, were you gathering information that many people would want to ride their bikes to go out and wine and dine? Did you get a lot of feedback about that?
We did. Actually, from our public survey, when we asked people what they were currently going out for, when they were walking and biking, where were they going? The highest majority of responders said that they were going out to restaurants, dining, shopping, short trips. So that was actually the highest percentage response.
Cool. And did facilities include places for cyclists to be able to lock up their bicycles at popular destinations?
That was not necessarily our intention for that goal, but definitely as we're thinking about, some of those maybe tourism or some of the programming goal, I think we can look at some of those overarching amenities that would be good locations for those ideas.
Cool. Okay, so we have one question. Are we, the commenter said they love that we're looking long-term at this, and asked, are we going to try and hit the low-hanging fruit, such as how the current trails do not connect well today, such as you can't get over Route 120 in McHenry going north easily because of the busy road and the light. They suggested a tunnel or an overpass at that location. So how does that priority look?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And we will be looking at long-term, the visionary ideas that actually Brian's going to jump into next, as well as some of those low-hanging fruit, immediate opportunities, even some of those really short gaps that are missing for a sidewalk or between pathways, especially as it connects to a downtown or a transit station or a school. We've actually started to dive in to all of those ideas, and we'll be sharing a little bit more here shortly. Great question.
Awesome. Okay. And then we just had one other comment about, you know, really needing that connection between Spring Grove and Richmond, and Richmond Township. So I know that, you know, that's something that we've looked at because we've heard a lot from people out in Spring Grove. So, you know, just putting that out there. And we also got a thank you for this presentation. So.
Oh, great. Well, and we are going to be going through an exercise in a little bit that we will actually be asking everybody to be putting dots around the county on where they'd like to go. So I would encourage anybody in the Spring Grove, Richmond area to make sure that you stay tuned and participate. That'll be a great opportunity to get your ideas of where you'd like to connect to. Great. Well, then I will keep moving forward. Brian?
Okay, so yeah, next slide. I get the pleasure of taking you guys through 3 basic exercises here. It's going to be the 3 bullets: vision for the county, some facilities preference, and the final one being priority routes. But what we're going to start doing first is we're going to ask you some questions about what we call a conceptual framework for a master plan. Every type of master plan like this has a conceptual framework, and it's a tool that we use to think about how we're going to get where we want to in the long term. And it's a bit of a big picture idea way down the road of where we would like to get to. That's really sort of what the concept and conceptual framework that we're showing you today are. So what we're going to do today is we're going to present you 3 different ways of looking at this, and we're going to ask you to give us your preference on those. We're not asking you to pick one or the other. We're asking you to tell us in order which ones that you would prefer, right? So everyone's going to have a little bit of a different preference if we just want to get a sense of the room. They're really big picture. Don't pay too much attention to every little green line that's going to be on these 3 maps. It's really just a way of thinking, and as we sort of work into the final recommendations, we'll expand those lines. It'll make sense here in a minute. They're ideas, they're not literal connections again, so don't take every line too literally. And we're asking you preference. So we're going to run through these. So I'm going to go through all 3 of them, and then we're going to have you give us your preference on them. So just sort of sit back and digest. It'll be about a minute or so per concept. Go into the next slide, Jennifer. You can usher me along if you need to for timing too. 3 basic concepts. Don't laugh at us. This is how we think of the plan. 3 basic ones: the web concept, the branch concept, and the loop concept. We'll show you them on the same slide at the end when we're done. Go ahead to the next one. The web concept, you can see the map to the right. The strategy here is really that we're starting off with the municipal centers, and we're going to create a web and a network of the right connections, right? Harvard, Hebron as an example, we're going to make a link between those right places. Woodstock, Marengo, we're going to try to make the right length. It's really about where we're starting in the project. We're going to start at the municipal centers. We're going to build some direct partnerships to create those connections, connect the centers, holistically link it all together, and eventually we're going to get this big web of the right facilities that links all the centers together. That's one way of looking at this project. Go ahead to the second one. The branch, you can see the transit line that's headed sort of angular, ends up at Harvard there up on the northwest. The idea of the branch is really that we're going to start with the transit system as a spine, right? And we're going to create all the links into that system. Looks like a branch, right? This idea of creating all the feeders into that big network. You can start, the centers can all link into there, and it's a different way of thinking about it. You build the right chains of partnerships, right? Marengo and Union partner with Lakewood, right? So it's a bit of like daisy chaining to get the right partnerships to connect in to the transit system and network, and it creates a feeder system. That's about compounding relationships, right? And implementation. So that's the second kind of way that we can look at it. The third way is the idea of the loop, right? So as we begin to look out again and think 15, 20 years, long term out for all these, right? It's really about creating a loop around McHenry County and connections to adjacent counties, right? As an example, creating the recreation loop. So the ability to go from Harvard and Union to Huntley and back, right? Or Harvard and Hebron and Woodstock, right? Creating these loops that connect us, that interconnect all the municipalities into a system, right? And build on a lot of the natural assets between, maybe, as an example. So that's really 3 kind of different ways of thinking about this master plan. So with your Mentimeter up, go on ahead to the next slide and we'll show them all so you can kind of see them side by side. Web, the branch, and the loop. There's sort of 3 really different ways of thinking about this kind of long-term conceptual framework. And so we want you to tell us sort of which order you prefer these in. Do you like the branch, the strategy around transit? Do you like the municipal center strategy? Do you like the recreational sort of loop strategy? And we'll see what comes back. We're really quite interested to see what comes back from this. And maybe we can just leave the images up there while people are doing it, and then maybe a minute or so we can toggle over.
It is fun to see the votes come in.
I have to click over.
I'm gonna share it. I can't wait. Too excited here.
So about 25 people have done.
Yep, and you can see how your ranking is coming in on first, second, and third.
It's about 60% of votes in.
They're all pretty close, though.
Yeah, not dramatically different.
No,
yeah.
No. $36 votes.
Maybe toggle back over just for another 20 seconds, just in case people weren't.
Sure. Yeah, so it looks, the loop concept is just slightly above the others. Again, it's pretty evenly split on some of the thoughts there. So we're at about 37 votes, Brian.
Okay, yeah, I'll get a good sense of it. Okay, so that's going to help us with thinking about sort of some of the bigger picture strategies and kind of where and how we start in the project. So thanks for that input. Don't put your Mentimeter down. Okay, the second phase of this is going to be really about your facilities preferences. Now, it's really good that a lot of you are new tonight. We sort of already asked a little bit of that question a bit more in the abstract during our public survey. Now having it live and having gone through a little bit of the exercise of looking at some of the connections, we've got some facilities that we want to ask you about. Now, I want to be clear, a facility, sometimes that word can confuse. Really all it means, same like if you were to say a building as a facility or a community rec center as a facility. All we're doing is using that term in context of a bicycle facility, which is like a bike lane is a bicycle facility, right? As an example. So just keep that in mind. It's a fancy word. It means really nothing. Carry on to the next one. So we're going to run through 5 different, and so what we want to do, again, Mentimeter, is gain a little bit of what your preference is on using that type of facility, right, to walk or to bike around. So let's just hit the next one. Yeah. And you should be able to hit S, and it should be able to show you the image that's on there on your screen, or you should be able to tap it on your phone, I believe. And this is a share the road facility. So this is a type of facility that has markings on the ground. It may have other types of markings or signs, but you're really riding in the road to some degree with a little bit of traffic. And that can be really bad on fast streets, but it can be okay on slower streets. So every facility has a place and a bike network. And so we're trying to get a sense of how much you prefer a share the road type of facility. They're inexpensive, right? There's positives to these types of facilities for sure. 26, so about half of people in. Maybe we'll around the 35 or so mark, we can flip to the next one, Jennifer, just in.
Yeah, well, and thinking about, I was just to say with time and we have a lot of fun questions coming up, so I'm gonna move forward.
So the next type faster. Yeah, there we go. I think people will probably get a bit of the hang of it. Okay, so the next type of facility is just a really wide sidewalk. So imagine, where you have your current sidewalks, you have a narrow sidewalk. It's like 3 feet wide, right? Barely wide enough for a wheelchair, right? So imagine if you were to widen that. What's your preference on walking on a much wider sidewalk? Maybe click on the image too if you want, Jen, or hit S, and it should, if you hit S, it should pop it up bigger.
Oh, there it is. I didn't realize that. Cool.
I think you can hit S again and it turns
Okay.
it off. Yeah.
All right. We got 36.
Getting somewhere in the middle range. Yep.
Yeah.
So the idea of a wider shoulder. So think about some of the roads that are maybe a little bit farther out, maybe a little bit more remote. The idea of widening the shoulder and having a space that is sort of dedicated for cyclists to ride along. Kind of don't go think too much about what's farther out. Just kind of isolate your mind. Is it okay to ride in that portion of the shoulder? Because the side of every road's a little bit different, right? And some roads might be 3 lane, with a center turn lane. Some roads might be 2 in this direction. It's sort of independent of what's happening in the road. Again, okay, so then we have what's called a dedicated bike lane, right? So that one was space on the side of a shoulder, right? Then there's what's called dedicating it, which is essentially where we stripe it out, we put proper signage on it, right? There's other kind of markings and vertical signage that helps identify where cyclists go. Sometimes they're green, right? In Oregon here, we have a lot of green lanes as an example. Getting a little bit higher ranking on that one.
Mm-hmm.
They're usually like 5 to 6 feet wide generally, riding in. Okay, now we have what's called a buffered bike lane, right? So you'll see the little striping and the dash striping that goes along the cyclist. Basically, it's a bike lane, and either on the car door side or on the traffic side, we add buffers, and what that does is that gives a little bit additional space for cyclists, a little bit additional visual warning for drivers to see and understand. It takes a little bit wider area too, though, right? So it's a bit of a trade-off. Sometimes they can buffer both sides, right? As an example.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, kind of middle range. And then we have protected bike lane facilities, right? I want to make that one a little bigger,
Yep.
Jan. It certainly is harder to see on that one. But essentially, there's a space, a lot of times it's between the curb line, and then there's a physical item, vertical item, like in this case, there's planters. Here we have a lot of very simple, short, like 6-inch tall, essentially like the car bumpers in a parking lot that sort of go along there. So it's just adding a vertical separation to keep cars from coming into those areas. And that's one way to do it. Maybe a little bit more expensive sometimes, depend on how you do it, but has a lot of the ground signage, vertical signage, etc. Then we have a mode separated trail. We probably have to make that one bigger as well.
Yep.
Essentially you can see here, there's a space that's kind of dedicated for where people are walking, and there's a clear material, pavement marking or some other type of denoting between where the cyclists are allowed to ride and where pedestrians walk, right? And so you can do that like 5-10 different ways, but it's the idea of separating them so there's clear mode separation, right? Again, that one has to be maybe a little bit wider sometimes, so it's a trade-off. Do you have the space for it, right? It's a little bit more expensive, right? You're building a wider area, but it's probably really safe, right? This is a trail that I rode last weekend, 2 weekends ago, but this is essentially a shared use trail. A lot of times it tends to be separated. It has its own kind of right of way, right? Tends to be pretty wide, 16 to 18 feet wide. Cyclists and pedestrians both ways. You ding your bell, right, to let everyone know. And that's a separate shared use trail. Sometimes they go through, far a little bit off the road. Sometimes they're through medians. They kind of do a lot of different things with those. And I think that's it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now's the fun exercise coming up.
Okay, great. So thank you. That was wonderful. So again, what we're going to do with that is you know, as we're sort of getting into looking at these routes a little bit more and more with the steering committee and sort of drawing these firm connections, we're going to be able to take a little bit more sensitivity to those facilities into that and make sure that we're capturing your aspirations there. Okay, so this is going to be the priority connection survey. This one's a little bit different. We've tried some stuff similar, but this is a little bit of an experiment for us. But so what we want you to do is sort of imagine that you're in one area of McHenry County, and we're going to ask you to put a dot on a map. If you were in that area, where would you most like to go from there, either walking or biking, right? So just kind of, these are all the dots on the screens that are, they're yellow. We've sort of clustered some of the areas together because they overlap. It's a little bit hard to see where, you know, one municipality ends and the other begins. So as an example, we've put McHenry and McCullen Lake together just because they're kind of close there. Fox Lake and Spring Grove are kind of close. So what we're going to go through is alphabetical order, each of these areas, and we want you to put a dot similar to how you did with your in the mapping initially. On if you were in that orange dot, where would you most like to go from there on a bike or walking? So this first one we might take a little bit longer. I think by the third or fourth, you guys will get the hang of it. You kind of have to put yourself in the mindset of, you know, I'm in Algonquin right now. Where would I most like to get to on a bike, you know, or walk, right?
Or Huntley or Lake in the Hills.
Or Huntley. Yeah, sorry. I just read the first one there. Sorry.
Yeah.
Huntley and Lake of the Hills, folks. So we've got, are they showing up yet or?
We're getting hearts. I'm not seeing dots though.
Do we just have a?
Let me real quick go out of Menti here. It's not showing dots. Maybe could we see if somebody is getting dots? Are you able to drop dots in the survey?
Someone typed in the Q&A that it is not working for them. There's no dots.
There's no dots. This is weird. It only shows that you can heart it, Brian.
I don't know.
I know, it's weird. All right. All right, I am going to try to flip this really quickly. Okay, let's do this on the fly then. I wonder if we can, for some reason it's not letting the dots happen. So we got 24 hearts on Algonquin, Huntley, and Lake in the Hills. Should I switch these to the open-ended questions and we'll have to just ask for input, Brian?
I think that might be the quickest thing
to be the only thing here, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll just get it on the fly.
All right. Give me
And
1 second.
one of the things we can also do is incorporate this into the survey.
Yes.
Maybe.
I'm so excited for this. All right. Well, how about, I apologize, everybody. This worked earlier. All right. I need 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. All right. I am going to do this again. Again, my apologies. So let's go alphabetically, Brian.
Yep.
Algonquin, and then what we'll do is put in the Menti here. If you were in Algonquin,
Algonquin, Huntley, and the Lake of the Hills area,
yes.
where would you most like to go?
And it says on Menti, are there any other questions you have tonight? And we will just be modifying this to say, if you were in Algonquin, Huntley, or Lake in the Hills, where would you like to go? We'll see. Crystal Lake.
And you should be able to look on the screen and you can name them.
Yep, I'm getting Crystal Lake, McHenry, Fox River Grove. Crystal Lake. And I'm not going to mark any of them as answered so that they're all showing up for us later, but we're getting lots of Crystal Lakes, Woodstock, Richmond. All right. Brian, the next one I think is Barrington Hills. Charlie, maybe you can throw in the Q&A, get these alphabetized for Brian so that he can ask those quickly.
Yep, so imagine you were in Barrington Hills, Cary, Fox River Grove, and Trout Valley. Where would you most want to go? Biking or walking? Kane County, Crystal Lake.
Yeah, this is McHenry.
McHenry, Richmond.
Carpenters, Crystal Lake, Spring Grove. Brian, I have to click on these each separately. So we got one for Cary, Woodstock, another for Woodstock,
Gotcha.
MCCD Fox Bluff. All right. Next one.
Next one, Bull Valley. So imagine if you're in Bull Valley, where do you want to go from there?
Woodstock. Woodstock.
Yep, if you want to,
Woodstock?
yeah, if you want to read, I'll keep on the.
Yep,
slides.
Woodstock. Woodstock or McHenry. Woodstock, McHenry, McHenry, Glacial Park, McHenry, Spring Grove, Spring Grove, Crystal Lake, Greenwood, Crystal Lake, Algonquin, Glacial Park. Great, next one.
Imagine if you were in Crystal Lake or Lakewood, where would you want to go from there?
McHenry, Spring Grove, McHenry, Woodstock, Harvard, Marengo, Spring Grove, Cary, Woodstock, Woodstock, McHenry, Prairie Trail, either north or south, Marengo, Woodstock, 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 Lake in the Hills, Spring Grove, Richmond, Spring Grove, McHenry, Marengo, McHenry, Union, MCCD Pleasant Valley. That looks like it. Let's go to the next one.
Next one is, if you're in Fox Lake and Spring Grove, where do you want to go?
Algonquin, Richmond, 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 McHenry, Glacial Park, Fox Lake Metro Station, Richmond. Chain of Lakes State Park. Chain of Lakes State Park. Connect to the Prairie Trail. Johnsburg. Glacial Park. Richmond. Woodstock. Barrington. Richmond, Johnsburg, McHenry, so the whole area. Marine Hills State Park. Prairie Trail. Crystal Lake. Harrington. Richmond. Hebron. Fox Lake Train Station. Route 12 Commercial District. Johnsburg. Chain of Lake State Park. Richmond. Glacial Park. McHenry. Richmond, Johnsburg, McHenry again. Richmond. McDonald's. And I think that's it. Next one.
Imagine if you're in Greenwood and Wonder Lake. Where would you like to go from there? Biking or walking?
Spring Grove. Spring Grove. Woodstock. Woodstock or McHenry. Woodstock. Woodstock. Bull Valley. Bull Valley. Spring Grove. Spring Grove. Spring Grove. Spring Grove. Spring Grove. Woodstock. McHenry. Spring Grove. Woodstock. Glacial Park. Glacial Park. Richmond. Crystal Lake. Crystal Lake. You guys are fast typers. Harvard. Greenwood General Store. Chain o' Lakes. Hebron. Glacial Park. I think that's it.
Okay, if you were in Harvard, where would you like to go? Or would you like to bike or walk if you were in Harvard?
Marengo. Woodstock. Hebron. Spring Grove. Richmond. Wisconsin. McHenry. Hebron. Spring Grove. Brookdale. Woodstock, Hebron. Woodstock. Walworth. Crystal Lake. Hebron. Union. Hebron. Hebron. Marengo and Woodstock. Crystal Lake. Boone County Trail. Woodstock. Woodstock. Boone County Trail. Spring Grove. Marengo. Lake Geneva. Lake Geneva again. Chain o' Lakes. Marengo Ride. Okay, next one.
Okay. Hebron, if you're in Hebron, where would you like to go? Biking or walking?
Spring Grove. Harvard. Richmond. Spring Grove. Spring Grove. Richmond. Crystal Lake. Spring Grove. Richmond. Lake Geneva. Spring Grove. Woodstock. Woodstock. Richmond, Spring Grove. Glacial Park. Woodstock. Chain o' Lakes. Lake Geneva. Lake Geneva. Spring Grove, Richmond, Chain o' Lakes, State Glacial Park. Long line. There we go. Harvard and Richmond. Woodstock. Next.
Okay,
We got another Woodstock.
If you're in Holiday Hills, Island Lake, Oakwood Hills, Port Barrington, or Prairie Grove, where would you like to go?
Got a Woodstock. Spring Grove. McHenry. Spring Grove. Crystal Lake. McHenry. Moraine Hills State Park. Woodstock. McHenry. Spring Grove. Barrington. McHenry or Crystal Lake. Crystal Lake, Woodstock. McHenry. McHenry. State Parks. Crystal Lake. Woodstock. Barrington, Cary, Crystal Lake. Crystal Lake. Crystal Lake. Don't know what this one says. I think. Oh, I think it meant to the south. Next one.
Okay. So if you're in Johnsburg or Ringwood, where would you like to go?
Spring Grove. Spring Grove. Spring Grove. Glacial Park. Spring Grove. Chain o' Lakes. Woodstock. Crystal Lake. Glacial Park. Glacial Park. Crystal Lake. Spring Grove. Chain o' Lakes. Crystal Lake. Spring Grove. Huron. Chain o' Lakes and Wilmot Mountain. McHenry, Crystal Lake, Glacial Park or Spring Grove, Woodstock, Spring Grove, Chain of Lakes, Glacial, Huron. Woodstock, Route 12 Commercial Strip.
Good.
Okay, next. Oh,
Okay, if
I've
you were in
reached. Hold on.
oh,
Go ahead.
if you're in Lakemore, where would you like to go?
Spring Grove, Chain of Lakes, Spring Grove, McHenry, Glacial Park, Spring Grove, Crystal Lake, Spring Grove, Fox Lake, Richmond, Johnsburg, Wonder Lake, Woodstock, McHenry, Crystal Lake through Moraine Hills, McHenry, Woodstock, State Parks, Crystal Lake. Next.
If you're
Woodman's.
in
Sorry.
Go more. If you're in Marengo or Union, where would you like to go?
Huntley, Algonquin, Crystal Lake, Woodstock, Woodstock, Huntley, Woodstock, Harvard, Huntley, Woodstock, Crystal Lake, Harvard, Algonquin, Harvard, Huntley, Rockford, Pleasant Valley, Algonquin, Boone, Railroad Museum Union, Richmond, Woodstock. Next, oh, Coral Woods Conservation Area.
If you're in McHenry or McCullen Lake, where would you like to go?
Spring Grove. Spring Grove, Crystal Lake, Spring Grove, Spring Grove, Woodstock, Spring Grove, Spring Grove, Spring Grove, Spring Grove, Spring Grove, north-south on the Prairie Trail, Crystal Lake, Moraine Hills State Park, Spring Grove, Woodstock, Richmond, Chain of Lakes, Harvard, Crystal Lake Train Station, Woodstock, Crystal Lake, Chain of Lakes, Johnsburg, Glacial Park.
Get two more.
Moraine
Almost
Hills.
there. Oh. Okay, if you were in Richmond, where would you like to go?
Spring Grove, Spring Grove, Hebron, Crystal Lake, Spring Grove, Lake Geneva, Spring Grove, Lake Geneva, Spring Grove, Spring Grove, Spring Grove, Spring Grove, Fox Lake, Chain of Lakes Park, Spring Grove, Lake Geneva, Chain of Lakes, Spring Grove, Hebron State Parks, Fox Lake, Schools, Chain of Lakes, Spring Grove, Woodstock, Hebron, Wisconsin, Route 12 Commercial Area.
Okay, so if you're in Woodstock, where would you like to go? Last one.
Spring Grove, Crystal Lake, McHenry, Algonquin, Crystal Lake, McHenry, Crystal Lake, Harvard, Greenwood, Pleasant Valley, Crystal Lake, Marengo, Harvard, Spring Grove, McHenry, Glacial Park, McHenry, Crystal Lake, Union, Richmond, Cary, Bull Valley, Greenwood, McHenry.
Okay.
Brookdale, we may still get some. That's good. Well, my apologies to everybody that technology failed us tonight. We were really hoping for anybody who's been to a public meeting that we were trying to do the dots exercise where you could put a dot or post it in an area where you'd like to go, and technology did not work for us. So we did get some good input from you all as you told us where you'd like to go, from some of these different areas, and we will map those out to be sharing with you all in our next meeting. Again, my apologies. I don't like when technology.
We are going to have just to be clear, we are going to have another follow-up survey, right, Jennifer?
Yes.
So we can probably perform a similar exercise.
Yes, we will. So to wrap up tonight, I wanted to share all of the goal summary maps that we highlighted earlier and to show how we're using those in looking at the recommendations as it relates to those areas. So we're going to have a map that we're going to share with you, like Brian said, in the survey, where you're going to get to look at all of these connections and recommendations that we are making. There's probably a lot more lines on the map than what we're intending to move forward with connections. But we're really trying to identify lots of different routes in McHenry County to get your input on. So shown here on your screen, and again, it's small, and this is how we wish we were in person so we could be leaning over the map and talking about some of these connections. But we are going to put it in a public survey so that you can zoom in and out of this and look at all of these ideas and give us input on. We're also looking at different facility types. So just like you saw some of the input today live, people are looking for different types of facilities. Some people want those trails. And so we tried to identify and start to look for recommendations to connect around the county. And those are those yellow lines that are shown here that, again, it's really small, but you'll get the opportunity to look at those. But we're looking at where can we fit those separated multi-use path trail facilities in McHenry. And then also the orange lines, where are the opportunities to put in on-street bike lanes, whether that's a sharrow or a wide shoulder or a bike lane, depending on the area and the room and the right of way. But where are some of those additional connections that we'd like to make? But we know that, you know, a separated facility may not fit. And then lastly, where are some of the sidewalks that are missing links? And those are the blue, and I'm sure there's a lot more opportunities to look for those that you know of in your communities. We tried to focus in on where we heard in the previous survey that sidewalks were missing and focusing in those downtown areas. We also identified areas for crosswalks or mid-block crossings based on, you know, where existing trails are and as they would cross a state route. And we heard input on safety concerns, or where are those crosswalks that are missing maybe near schools or in downtown areas to, again, enhance safety for different users. So we will be putting this map on the public survey to get your input. And I also wanted to show tonight, again, we took that map of all of these recommended facilities and we layered it in with all of those goal maps that I showed earlier to really start to understand and identify where are the different facilities that we're focusing on or we're recommending as it relates to the goals to make sure we're really addressing connectivity and safety. That we're looking at those high crash corridors and making sure that we're putting safe facilities on it. Or when we're talking about health and education, are we connecting schools, hospitals, libraries, long-term health centers with facilities? Or thinking of community and equity, are we looking at some of those dense populated areas, but also focusing in on the different types of users like we had talked about or mentioned earlier? Are we looking at connecting train stations and bus stops and bus routes, et cetera? And then the economy and tourism, are we recommending facilities near points of interest, natural resources, the places that people want to go to really enhance the economy and tourism potentials around McHenry County? So all of that is combined into this draft recommended facilities map that we will be putting on a public survey, just like last time, where you will be able to go in and pinpoint, make notes. I don't like this facility, move this to a different road. I highly recommend this connection. In the next couple weeks, we will be putting up the link for the survey on the project website again, and we will be leaving it open for likely 3 weeks for input. We'd be asking everybody to share the website, the survey with as many people as you can. We'd love to get over 300 respondents and beat our last survey. Again, there's a lot to react to here and get input from everybody. And just to finish up tonight, before we open it up for any additional questions that you all may have, and we're over time, again, my apologies because of technology. This is our second meeting. We plan to be wrapping up our draft recommendations and this action plan for biking and walking in McHenry over the summer and be sharing that final action plan with everybody when it's done towards the end of the summer. So with that, I'd love to open it up to any questions that you all have tonight. And once again, apologize for technology failing.
So we do have one question going all the way back to the bigger vision for the county. What would you say are the feasibility levels for each? Is one more feasible than the other, or are they all about the same?
Brian, do you want to?
I mean, we intrinsically haven't done any feasibility on kind of what those ideas are. I think important thing you need to realize too is that they all overlap a little bit. So the components of the web are just a part of the branch as anything, right? So it's not really a feasibility exercise so much as an exercise of how are we going to start creating the right partnerships and making the right initial connection. So it's not really a question of feasibility in that regard. I mean, we could probably look at some individual facilities and say, yeah, that's feasible or not, but no, we haven't looked at, I think they're probably all about equivalent. I wouldn't say there's a distinguishing difference between either of them. They're very, very conceptual.
Great.
That was a bit of a punt on that answer, so.
Could you show the recommended facilities map again?
Sure. And again, it is pretty small, but it will be on the public survey where you'll be able to zoom in and out of Google. It's a Google map. You'll be able to zoom in and out and be able to make comments on the facilities and the locations and all of that information in that survey.
Okay, so we have a question about after this is adopted, what would you say is one way of approaching how the implementation part and the funding part of this project? I know from my end, one thing that we're looking at is obviously federal funding, right? And one of the benefits of having a bike plan in place is that sometimes that can open up some federal funding opportunities, particularly through our metropolitan planning organization, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, or CMAP. So that's one way. IDOT also has a bicycle and pedestrian fund that we can look into. But Jennifer, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I think that's one of the things that we'll be looking at from the maintenance and management, right, is where we're putting facilities. Who would those potential partners be, especially as it would be on different routes around the county. And that those conversations are going to be follow-ups as different opportunities arise. I would love if Scott is still on, if he has anything to add from the county standpoint about, adopting this, and maybe Emily, if you could, because this is a Council of Mayors project. We didn't really cover that in the beginning, and just what that means from around the county.
Yeah, speaking for the county's standpoint, a lot of these roadways we're looking at improving are county roads. And so we have an interest in making sure that this plan reflects the county's priorities. But we also recognize there's a lot of folks from the cities here today. I heard the word prioritization come out a lot today. And really that's what this plan is trying to do. Is we know there's a lot of need out there on everyone's system, whether it's the county, the township, the municipal system. But we feel that this plan, if we're doing our job, will help us prioritize which of those projects are the most important. And to Emily's point, we can look at, okay, how do we fund those projects? Whether we like it or not, a lot of these type of projects are funded using federal funds, which pay for anywhere up to 80% of the project's cost. And so having a plan in place will obviously help us acquire federal funding in the future.
Got it.
Right. So another question, Jennifer, could you kind of explain why most of these trails are located on the eastern half of the county.
Yes. So one of the things that we had been looking at is, again, looking at population density. Where are some of the different needs of users? And as we laid out all of the different system, we got a lot of feedback that in some of the rural areas, it would be harder to maintain separated facilities, especially when we're thinking of the winter months. There's large areas of roadways that maybe aren't traveled as much, or just from the snow plowing and the maintaining, and that a wider facility or a wider shoulder, a wider lane would be easier to maintain out on the western part. I do think that there's some opportunity, as we're looking at some of the missing links or some of the input that we heard tonight, to look for potentials for a separated facility, or trail connections that may be missing. But that's where we'd love to get some input from you on where are those needs, and to Scott's point, some of those priorities. Scott, do you want to add to that? I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'll reiterate what Jennifer just said. In addition to the fact that the eastern part of the county is more populated, it's more dense, and therefore the usage of these off-street facilities will be higher than on the western side of the county. In addition to that, one of our goals is to make sure we can maintain these facilities if they're built. As an example, the state of Illinois, when they come in and they build a bike path along a state route, they expect that there's some agency, some jurisdiction, whether it's a city, the county, a township, or the conservation district. They expect somebody to maintain that trail, not only reconstruct it when it needs to be resurfaced, but also to do things like winter maintenance and to fill potholes and things like that. In the western part of the county, unfortunately, a lot of our townships just don't have the financial capabilities to take on that maintenance obligation. And so that's why what you see here recommends a lot of on-street accommodations, on-street facilities, which a township or the county can go out and plow the wide shoulder or a bike lane potentially at the same time that they're plowing the travel way for the motorists, which are a lot easier to maintain than an off-street facility.
Great. So another question, is this plan only including local township and city roads, or do you have to work with IDOT, and how is this being funded? So quick on the funding side of things, we have a IDOT grant. It's a statewide planning and research grant that is funding this plan. The county, McHenry County, put up a 20% match, and the total project cost is $200,000. So $160,000 is being paid for by the state of Illinois, and then the match by McHenry County. And then Jennifer, do you want to talk about the roadway jurisdictions here?
Yes, and we were looking at all roads. So like the question, it was the local jurisdiction, county roads, township, and state. So you will see recommendations that are shown here that are on all different ownership, all different agencies. So I think as we start to move forward to, are these the right connections? Are they on the right routes? To Scott's point, right? How do we start to prioritize these as it relates to, can it be built? When is that road maybe it's being reconstructed and there's an opportunity to put those facilities, or it's being, widened, or something's being done. But also, those partnerships are going to be key as we're looking at priorities and thinking about moving forward towards implementation.
All right, Scott, I'm actually going to give you this question. To what extent do you see McHenry County coordinating with Lake and Kane counties?
It's a great question, especially since a lot of the cities that are part of the McHenry County Council of Mayors, they span across county lines. So for example, Huntley and Algonquin are also part of Kane County. They spill south of the county line. Other cities like Island Lake and Lakewood and Fox Lake, they're all partially in Lake County. So I think it's important and it's incumbent upon us to make sure we are coordinating with our peers in Lake and Kane County, and to the west also DeKalb, and to the north Walworth County as well. I think something that the county, speaking on behalf of the county, we always are coordinating with our peer counties on a regular basis on a variety of projects. This is one of them. And then Emily has, I guess, peers, planning liaisons that represent both Lake and Kane counties. So she's constantly communicating with them. And I would anticipate that when this plan's all said and done, we probably will do a presentation or some type of event to make both of our neighbors aware of the planning process.
Great. And this next question is about maintenance. So, we did talk about a little bit about maintenance, but when it comes to plowing, that's something that comes up a lot. And the question was, are things like that going to be included in the plan?
Yes. Well, and I think, as you guys from one of the previous questions about why are there yellow and orange lines, we are considering that even as we're recommending facility design, and what type of facilities could go where based on how they could be maintained. One of our goals is on that maintenance and management. So some of the recommendations in the plan could be on prioritized, routes for snow plowing. This is if we have an identified future connection that's really important to some of the communities, that can definitely be a priority recommendation. But we can be looking at some of those other best practices and maintenance for biking and walking facilities that would be in the final plan.
Okay, that is everything in the Q&A box that I have.
Well, and I wanted to leave everybody tonight with great appreciation for all the input that we received, even going through the hiccup, taking the survey. Your input on Menti and the questions were fantastic. We are going to re-listen to all of this again and make sure our team is really working in all of your comments, addressing the questions, focusing on the connections that you helped us walk through and identify through that priority mapping. We will be putting the public survey on the project website over the next week and a half. So please, visit McHenryCountyConnection.com. We'll be putting it on social media with Emily and the county's help and making sure that that link is being pushed out. But it'll be the opportunity to provide a lot more detailed information that you find important. Those routes that maybe you would love to see prioritized, to that question about snow plowing, or there's a connection that may be missing that we didn't get on this first round. This is the perfect time for you to provide that feedback to us, and we are really excited about getting the survey up and ready for your input. So thank you so much. Emily, did you have anything else?
No, just thank you so much for coming tonight. Please take the survey. It's really, really helpful for all of us to get your feedback and be able to reference that. So, please take that. Please visit the website, and feel free to contact me if you have anything else that you think of after this meeting or after the survey. You can reach me at my email's on the website. You can type a comment on the website. You should be able to find me. So,
yep. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.